The first notification didn't just ping, it slammed through the silence of my apartment like a grenade, rattling the frames on the wall. I was still in my dress blues, metals pressed and polished, the stiff fabric digging into my shoulders the way duty had dug into my soul for the past 12 years. My hands smelled faintly of gun oil and regret, a scent I'd come to associate with every hard choice I'd made in Mosul, Kandahar, and countless other dust-choked battlefields. I froze. 9 years of service had trained me to read danger in a glance, betrayal in a twitch, but this was different. This was quiet chaos, domestic and unyielding. The message was from an unfamiliar number. "James, it's your sister, Rachel. Something's happened." Rachel, my little sister, the one who had once climbed under the hood of my old Mustang, laughing as if the car itself was a trampoline. I felt a cold burn in my chest. Something in her voice, even over text, carried the casual cruelty I'd learned to anticipate from family who never understood what service demanded. My thumb hovered over the screen, unwilling to tap, unwilling to know. Then another message arrived, time-stamped a second later. "We're taking the car, and Alex, he can't stay here anymore." Alex, my 9-year-old boy, my anchor in a life that had often felt like a minefield. My blood ran cold. I had left him in the care of my family while I deployed overseas, trusting Rachel and Dad to act with basic decency. Apparently, that trust had been a mistake. The room seemed to contract, walls pressing in. My mind raced through every memory of deployments, every time I had kissed my son goodbye, believing the mundane horrors of separation were the worst I would ever face. But nothing had prepared me for this. My own blood, my own home, conspiring to discard the most sacred part of my life. Then I remembered the camera, the small body cam I had installed months earlier, mostly for safety while I was away. I had laughed at the thought of leaving it, thinking it unnecessary. Now it was the only weapon I had, the only witness to what they had done behind my back. I sat down heavily on the edge of the bed, phone trembling in one hand, the other pressed against the permanent ache in my right knee from a fall during a night patrol in Mosul. My uniform jacket rustled faintly, stiff as a second skin I could never shed, a reminder of the life I led in parallel to theirs, a life of honor, rigor, and consequence. The notifications kept coming. Rachel's words, Dad's cryptic emoji responses, a chain of betrayal stretching across the screen. I exhaled slowly, a soldier's breath, steady despite the storm inside. This was the inciting moment. The line had been drawn, and for the first time, I realized that my deployments, my medals, and the discipline that had defined me would collide not with insurgents overseas, but with the betrayal waiting at home. I typed a short reply, careful, controlled, because the first step in any operation, whether in Kabul or my apartment, was assessment. Leave him. Don't touch anything else. And then I pulled up the feed from the body cam. What I saw made my stomach knot and my hands go cold. Every motion, every whispered word, every act of their selfish, reckless cruelty, captured. I didn't need to imagine it. I didn't need to hear excuses. I had the evidence, and for the first time in years, I felt the sharp clarity of control return to me, the same way it had on the battlefield. I am James Carter, 32 years old, U.S. Army Sergeant, Military Police Corps, and I was about to confront my family with the truth they never saw coming. The hum of the apartment's AC was the only sound as I leaned against the counter, scrolling through the footage again. Alex's small, frightened face, Rachel's careless smirk, Dad's indifferent shrug. It was all there. The betrayal was quiet, but it cut deeper than any firefight I'd survived. I had spent the better part of my life in service, not for medals, not for accolades, but for control, the ability to act decisively when everything around me was chaos. As a U.S. Army sergeant in the Military Police Corps, my MOS had trained me to anticipate threats, manage crises, and enforce the law, often under fire. The work was grueling, unglamorous, and lonely, but it was mine. I understood consequences, discipline, honor. At home, apparently, those concepts were negotiable. I remembered the deployments that had taken me to the edges of the world, Kandahar, Mosul, countless missions where every choice carried weight. I had returned from one particularly brutal assignment with a medal in hand, a tangible acknowledgement from the military of sacrifices I had made silently. I had imagined the pride in my father's eyes when I told him. Instead, I got a shrug and a muttered, "That's nice, son." My sister had laughed, calling me the army robot. It stung every time, but I learned not to flinch. I learned that honor was internal, not performative. My family's indifference was their problem, not mine. And yet, Alex was different. His innocence, his trust, it wasn't theirs to disregard. I thought back to the drawer in my childhood room where Dad kept his papers and small collections. He had always told me, some things are private, keep them hidden. I realized years later that some things were hidden to protect the guilty, not the innocent. My drawer, my uniform, my medals, they were mine, tangible proof of who I was. And now my camera feed would serve the same purpose for Alex. There had been moments, quiet ones, when I had tried to reach them. A phone call on leave, a birthday card sent with my last paycheck. "We're proud of you," they said once, but it was hollow, more about appearances than truth. My words, my life's work, had been minimized to emojis and half-hearted praises. That dismissal had been a constant companion, gnawing at the edges of my patience. The decision to deploy the body cam hadn't been about paranoia, it had been preemptive protection. Alex had always been the priority, my reason for enduring deployments, long nights, and endless bureaucracy. I never expected to need proof against my own family, but war taught one a simple rule: always be prepared, always document, always anticipate betrayal. Now, in the quiet apartment, I felt the weight of that preparation. The footage was clear. Alex was pleading, Rachel was dismissive, Dad was cold. The car, my old Mustang, more than just metal and paint, a piece of my identity, was being taken. I remembered the first time I had bought it, scraping together pay from my first deployment, polishing it every weekend, and taking Alex on rides through the empty streets while he laughed uncontrollably. Memories, erased, but not entirely, not yet. I exhaled slowly, closing my eyes, letting my military training anchor me. Situational awareness, risk assessment, action plan. The mission was clear: protect Alex, reclaim what is ours, and confront the betrayal with precision, not emotion. Rage would cloud judgment, control would win. Pulling the laptop closer, I reviewed the recordings again. Every word, every gesture, every lapse in their moral compass, it was all there. I paused on a frame of Alex, clutching his small backpack, staring at the hallway as if sensing the storm that was about to hit. I felt my jaw tighten. Protecting him wasn't optional, it was non-negotiable. As I planned the next steps, I allowed myself a rare reflection, the chasm between my life in service and my life at home. My comrades respected discipline, my superiors understood sacrifice. At home, my accomplishments were jokes, my ethics optional, my son's safety negotiable. The irony wasn't lost on me. All my training, all my accolades, all my courage, it mattered in the world, just not in my living room. But that was about to change. I began drafting the strategy. First, secure Alex, then confront Rachel and Dad with the evidence. Not in anger, not in theatrics, but with undeniable clarity. The footage would speak. The betrayal could no longer hide behind smiles and excuses. And then, as I mapped it all out, I realized this wasn't just about revenge. It was about establishing boundaries, reclaiming control, and teaching Alex that integrity mattered more than approval, more than smiles from the people who should have protected him. I looked at the camera feed one last time before standing. Alex's eyes met mine through the screen, wide and trusting, and I felt a wave of resolve settle over me. They had underestimated me. They had underestimated what a soldier was capable of, especially when the mission was protecting his child. I straightened my uniform, even though I was still in my apartment, and allowed a grim, quiet smile. The confrontation would come soon,
But for now, the evidence was ready. The strategy was clear. The chasm between them and me was no longer a weakness, it was a line in the sand. And before I moved, I recorded one short video on my phone, speaking directly to those watching. If you're still listening, please comment where you're watching from and subscribe to Betrayal Feud for more videos. The mission had begun. The first attempt to reach out to Dad and Rachel felt like stepping into a familiar battlefield, one where the terrain was treacherous and the enemy invisible. I had sent a calm message, careful not to trigger defensiveness, simply asking for Alex's safety and the return of my Mustang. The reply came within minutes, short and dismissive. "He'll be fine, don't overthink it." As for the car, we made other plans. Plans. That word burned. My Mustang wasn't just a car, it was the embodiment of years of hard work, the first tangible success I had achieved as a young soldier. And Alex, my son, my mission, had been reduced to a passing inconvenience in their lives. I closed the phone and let silence fill the room. In the Army, we trained for situations like this, where words failed and action was required. I had learned not to flinch when faced with disrespect, betrayal, or indifference. My uniform and my discipline had to carry the weight that emotions could not. I replayed the footage again, scrutinizing every frame. Rachel's laugh as she packed the car, Dad's shrug when Alex clutched at the doorframe. The betrayal was meticulous, almost ceremonial in its coldness, but it was also evidence, and evidence could not lie. It could not be ignored. The next few days were a careful dance of restraint. I returned to my duties, reviewing patrol logs, mentoring new recruits, and keeping my interactions precise and controlled. Every action reminded me that honor did not depend on acknowledgement, it depended on adherence to principle. When I visited the military base for a routine inspection, I wore my uniform with deliberate precision, adjusting the creases on my sleeves, ensuring my boots shone, medals polished. There, in the sterile lights of the barracks, I felt a quiet affirmation. My life had structure, purpose, and respect, even if my family failed to recognize it. Returning home later that evening, I tried again, calmly, strategically, to contact them. The responses were predictably indifferent. Rachel sent a single shrug emoji. Dad responded with a terse, "Not my problem." The words could have broken me years ago. Now they were a mirror, reflecting only their own failure, not my own worth. I began a silent reckoning, a private ceremony of understanding and acceptance. The betrayal of those closest to me was real, but it no longer defined me. My training, my discipline, my love for Alex, they did. I spent hours poring over the footage again, not out of obsession, but to catalog every detail. I labeled each clip, time-stamped every word. This was not revenge, this was evidence of reality, a record that could not be erased. It was truth in its purest form, and truth, once captured, carries power that sarcasm and dismissiveness cannot touch. I realized slowly that my family's rejection was not a reflection of my value or of the sacrifices I had made. It was a reflection of their limitations. The world I inhabited, the one of responsibility, honor, and consequence, was separate from theirs. I had tried to merge them, and they had refused. That refusal did not diminish me, it clarified the line between us. And at the ceremony the next day, I walked with quiet dignity, keeping my head high, my steps measured. Officers shook my hand, subordinates saluted, colleagues smiled with genuine pride. In that room, there was no betrayal, no sarcasm, no indifference, only acknowledgement of the hard work, the risk, and the integrity that had defined my career. And for the first time, I allowed myself to feel satisfaction. Not a victory over my family, but the quiet acknowledgement that I had remained true to myself. Later, in the solitude of my apartment, I watched Alex's favorite cartoon with him, the footage hidden safely on a secure drive. I didn't need to explain to anyone else what had happened. I didn't need validation or apologies. I had protected my son. I had documented the betrayal. I had preserved the truth. The silent reckoning was complete. The rejection had arrived and departed. The medals, the footage, the discipline, they were enough. And I knew the collision with reality, the moment when my family would finally see what they had missed, was coming. The evidence would speak louder than their sarcasm, louder than their dismissal. I leaned back, finally exhaling. Honor is not performative. Respect is not demanded. Integrity is the quiet, unshakable anchor that guides action when the world is indifferent. For Alex, for myself, I had fulfilled my duty. And the next step, when the revelation came, would be just as deliberate, just as precise as any mission I had undertaken overseas. It started quietly, almost imperceptibly. I wasn't the one who delivered the evidence to them. My aim was never public shaming, but the world has a way of moving faster than intentions. A friend of a friend had shared a clip on social media, just a brief fleeting moment of Alex looking small and terrified, Rachel smirking as she tried to pack the car. The notifications came first, muted, then louder. My phone buzzed relentlessly. Messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years, tagging Rachel, Dad, even neighbors who had witnessed the small betrayals.
I watched the reaction unfold like a calculated operation. The first sign, Dad's Facebook post, a short, awkward string of words. Not sure what's happening. I thought I was doing the right thing. The ellipsis hung there like an unspoken admission. Rachel's comments were more visible, more frantic. I didn't think. I didn't know. Alex, I just meant to... They stumbled over each other in text and video, trying to find justification, trying to reclaim control, but the evidence was clear. The footage I had recorded, the moments I had preserved were immutable. Every smirk, every careless gesture, every dismissive word, they could not be erased. I sat quietly in the apartment with Alex, watching the chaos ripple through their world. He was blissfully unaware, focused on his coloring book, crayons scattered like battlefield debris across the table. He didn't need to understand the moral intricacies, only the truth that his father had protected him. That was enough. Dad tried to reach out eventually, through texts and phone calls, but the tone was off, awkward, hesitant, seeking validation rather than accountability. "James, can we talk? I think I messed up." I didn't answer immediately. I let him wait. Every call, every message was a reminder that control and dignity are not obligations of the betrayer, they are the right of the wronged. Rachel, too, reached out, her attempts dripping with excuses. She claimed ignorance, claimed miscommunication, claimed anything that might lessen her culpability. But I had watched her face, her hands, her words in the recordings. There was no miscommunication. There was intention, selfishness, and disregard for my son. I decided to respond, but carefully, with measured clarity. I didn't yell. I didn't berate. I stated facts. Alex is safe. The car is returned. Everything else is documented. Actions have consequences, as you can see. The shift was immediate in their tone. Confusion, guilt, and a creeping realization that they had underestimated me, underestimated the quiet, disciplined power of someone who had spent years in environments where mistakes were lethal. They assumed my detachment meant weakness. It did not. And slowly, grudgingly, imperfection met reality. Dad apologized in a way that was awkward, incomplete, and unsatisfying, but still a step toward acknowledgement. Rachel, too, reached out, with hesitant attempts at repair. None of it erased the past, none of it restored innocence, but it established a new boundary, a new equilibrium. For Alex, life continued. He didn't care about apologies or explanations. He cared about safety, about consistency, about the presence of the parent he trusted most. I provided that. I gave him structure, clarity, and love without conditions. The betrayal of the adults around him did not define his world. My actions did. And me? I realized the truth that eluded me in the immediate aftermath of deployment, in the silent dismissal of my family, in the cold indifference to my medals and sacrifices. Validation from others is fleeting. Respect from those who do not understand discipline is irrelevant. Honor is internal. Integrity is unshakable. I began to rebuild the rhythm of life, small and deliberate. Work, family, and duty formed the pillars. The Mustang became a symbol again, not of ownership, but of vigilance. The footage remains secure, a reminder that accountability exists even when the world attempts to ignore it. There was no grand reconciliation, no cinematic forgiveness. That was not how life worked. Dad and Rachel adjusted slowly, imperfectly, as humans do when confronted with their failings. Alex thrived, shielded by boundaries and deliberate care. And me? I stopped waiting for recognition, for apology, for approval. I stopped expecting validation from the people who had shown me how little they understood sacrifice. I found peace in the quiet weight of my own decisions, the disciplined execution of my duties, and the unwavering protection of my son. Some evenings, I sit in my apartment, medals beside me, laptop open to the archived footage, and reflect on the lessons. Not everyone in life will understand the choices you make. Not everyone will honor your sacrifices. But you can control your actions, your integrity, and your commitment to those that matter. For anyone listening, anyone who has faced betrayal from those closest to them, here's what I learned. Control what you can, protect what matters, document what is necessary, and let the truth eventually find its own path. You don't need apologies. You don't need recognition. You need only your own honor, your own discipline, and the quiet, unshakable knowledge that you did right. I glance at Alex's drawings on the table. He's asleep now, and feel the hard-won satisfaction of peace earned in silence. The world outside may misunderstand, may dismiss, may betray, but inside this apartment, inside this family, the line is clear. I am a soldier. I am a father. I am a man of honor. And that, in the end, is enough.